Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone. It's so great to have you all here. My name is Leigh-Ann Webster. I'm the Executive Director with the National Board for Health and Wellness Coaching. I've been with the organization for about 7 years, and I'm based in San Diego, California. And I am joined here with my two colleagues. Nicole and Katie, do you want to introduce yourselves?
Sure. I'm Nicole Pope. I'm the Director of Operations for the National Board for Health and Wellness Coaching. I've been here for about 4 years. If you sat for the board exam, chances are we have spoken together and worked together to get you through that process. I do help with exam applications and that process as well. And we're thrilled to have such a great group here today.
And I'm Katie Goodell. I live in Dallas, Texas. I have been with NBCHWC as an administrative coordinator since last April, and I'm also a board certified coach. Welcome, everybody.
Oh, and I am a National Board Certified Health and Wellness Coach as well. So I am here to introduce our guest. We've been waiting for months for Dr. Ivan Young to come talk with us. Dr. Ivan Young, thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome.
Oh, it's wonderful to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, anytime. So could you tell us, well, actually, first, let me let the coaches know how we'll be moving this forward today. So what we thought we would do is just start with an introduction from Dr. Young, and then I'm actually going to be asking him some questions about how he developed his business, and then we're going to open it up to the audience because we really want this to be an interactive discussion today so that everybody has a chance to talk and learn as we move through the hour. So Dr. Young, tell us about you. Where are you from? What does a day in the life of Dr. Young look like?
Oh, wow. That if I say that, I'll either be laughed at or probably getting myself in trouble. But the simple answer is I work my behind off. I spend a great deal of time furthering my expertise as a coach, studying and living that brand, meaning getting up, working out, prayer, meditation, looking at content to see what is new on the horizon and what is shaping the landscape of health and wellness coaching and coaching in general. My background in brief is I'm a ICF Master Certified Coach. I'm also a National Board Health and Wellness Certified Coach and a professional diversity coach. So I have a cross-section of credentials that I've worked on. I have a PhD in holistic coaching. And with all that said, the emphasis has never been to get the letters behind my name. I simply wanted to be the best at what I do. And in order to do that, you have to lean in or press in on building competency and an effective ability to deploy what you've learned.
Yeah, that's very true. I'm curious, what part of America do you live in?
I'm in Houston, Texas.
Okay, so you're close to Katie. What inspired you to become a coach? Obviously, you started with ICF and then you became a National Board Certified Health and Wellness Coach. But what inspired you to go into coaching in the first place?
Well, you know, my background was neuroscience, and my mother died, and I was fortunate enough to have this neuroscience background. And I was looking at people who call themselves coaches. And at that point, there was a disconnect. I realized that how are you calling yourself a coach? And you don't understand the epistemological development of a child or the psychology of women or developmental psychology or abnormal psychology or positive psychology. What gives you the right to toy around with critical needed deliverables in people's lives and self-labeling yourself a coach and being honest, Leigh-Ann, Nicole, that's what the hell I was doing. And from that, I realized that I did not want to be a self-ordained miscreant doing a disservice to the term coaching. And from that point, I started realizing that if I'm going to be a coach, I need to get certified. I need to be trained properly, and I need to not only have, and a lot of us do, we go into this profession with a gift for empathy, but you need proper training and credentialing if you are going to do professional coaching, and especially in the health and wellness space.
Yeah, I agree. And by the way, you mentioned the word empathy. For any coaches who are interested, last week's 60 Minutes was about the psychological makeup of a hero, and that a lot of heroes have a profound empathetic personality. And one thing that was really interesting was that they found that the amygdala in people who were more empathetic and had more of a hero-like personality was larger than in people who don't. So I encourage anyone to look up that 60 Minutes. It was a very interesting show.
Well, you mentioned something about the amygdala and the difference between processing, hence why you need to be pursue education and more CUs, is the amygdala is the part of the brain that is on autopilot, and it's operating under the auspices of the sympathetic nervous system, where the prefrontal cortex is in the present moment, and you're strategizing and you're thinking. So with that premise being stated, it's saying that there is something organic in the nature of coaching. And when we start talking about the hero, that comes from the archetypical work of Carl Jung, if you really dig deeper. I have a new book now I'm working on, and I just did a talk for the ICF Converge conference on accurate empathy. And what we start doing in coaching and missing the mark, and this connects to building a practice, by the way, is that we fail to understand that if you're going to take a situation and have that situation evolve where it is effective for your client, empathy is going to be the core component in coaching that you're going to use. And everything that we do, especially as health and wellness coaches, comes from our ability to tap into the client's their problem, their issue, their pain, their plight, and be mindfully present in such a way that empathy is the umbilical cord that connects us to our client. So I think that's an excellent starting point for this conversation.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Well, you mentioned building blocks for your business, right? And empathy. So for anyone who doesn't know, Dr. Young has quite a prominent presence online. He has had more than 3 million views on his TEDx talk. He's got over 80,000 followers on Facebook. So you've obviously built a thriving practice, Dr. Young, and clearly empathy is at the heart of that. Can you a lot of the coaches here are really, really interested to learn about, how you have built that practice and what they as coaches can start doing to build up their practice. Can we take a little deeper dive into that?
Please. And thank you for being so generous with that. If you're going to thrive as a coach, the first lesson you must learn and accept is it's not about you. When your clients come and choose you, become aligned with you, that is happening because there is a need in that person's life for relief, for transmogrification or transformation. And it is so pronounced now that they have finally paid attention to that little something that's brushing their ear, blowing on their neck, and you are the end result. I've watched many a coach at the many conferences that I've attended throughout my tenure, the many lectures that I've given or been party to. Many coaches come in there with this idea that I'm going to leave my job. I'm going to stop being a nurse practitioner. I'm going to, quit being a psychologist or whatever, and I'm going to go into coaching. And I'm going to do it because I know how to help people solve their problems. Well, first thing, people know how to solve their own problems, and you as a coach are a facilitator of that awareness and enlightenment. That's number one. Number two, If there's anything that you want to do to build a practice, I'm going to tell you that starts with making people feel a sense of safe and security with you. It's an ICF competency, is creating a safe space and holding the client in high regard. And the other thing is, by being empathetic, now you tap into your need to become much more skilled and competent in what you have to give your clients. And that is at the forefront of what it takes to create a robust practice and to have growth. One of the things that I incidentally did, I've written on LinkedIn over 100 articles. Some of those articles have had 14,000 redistributions, 20,000 redistributions. I've been on everything from 2020 to Nightline, featured in the Huffington Post several times, Essence Magazine, and what have you. Everything that I was writing, all the content I was creating, having a hit television show for 10 seasons on BET and TV1 called Fatal Attraction, all of that was created because I connected to people's suffering. I connected to their need to have someone be there for them at sometimes their best moment, because that can also be someone's most lonely moment or their worst moment when they're surrounded by people and feel yet alone. The first thing, if you're taking notes today, that I would suggest that you write down, it's not about me, dash, how can I make it about you with my coaching toolbox? And that is the first step in creating a successful coaching practice. And if you notice, I have not mentioned a mail distribution list. I haven't mentioned a landing page. What I am insisting upon is that you become aware of the value of compassion and empathy.
Yeah, yeah. I love what you said, connecting with someone's suffering. That's very, very impactful. You mentioned the coaching toolbox. So can you tell us a little bit more about what's in your coaching toolbox?
Yes. Again, those of you who are not nationally board certified on this call, I first want to commend you for pursuing that. It's going to be something that is going to reward you in ways that you cannot imagine. But within that toolbox, whether you're going through Well Coaches or whatever program, you will notice that there's some things that I call the foundation of a successful coach. One is motivational interviewing, appreciative inquiry, understanding theories like the dialectical behavioral approach to coaching and therapy, acceptance and commitment therapy, understanding what a generative moment is, having the ability to be mindfully present, which is huge. I think if there's one thing we don't teach enough about is being very mindful and the power of being mindful. These are the things that are essentials for you as a coach. Now, if you look at the National Board's website, you will see that there are a lot of continuing education offerings on that site that have been well vetted for you. And I suggest that you start there when you look at fortifying your foundation. The most significant contributor to you being effective, to you creating a successful brand and being someone that your clients come back to. And here's what I mean by that. Why in the hell am I going to come back to you next year and get the same crap you gave me the year before? And especially if what you gave me, let's say it was successful, but moderately so, 70%. Well, in a year with the decay rate, that success is going to go down to 60%. And at 2 years, it's down now to 50%. Well, I can halfway help myself. I don't need to pay you $100, $200 an hour to do that. The other part of this is, as you start looking at your toolbox, you have to, like a good mechanic, figure out, what am I going to specialize in? For me, my client base is high net worth individuals, public figures, licensed and degreed professionals, and entrepreneurs. Those are the people that are going to be well suited for me because what I've experienced in my life resonates with them. I speak their language. We're kindred spirits. And I understand what it's like to go and get on a first class flight and hope that they pay for transportation because I didn't have enough to get there and get back. You know, I know what that feels like. I know what it feels like to work and help other people every day and need to be helped and worked with myself. And I'm saying that as you start putting these tools in your toolbox, also consider with great measure, who can I best serve with the toolbox that I'm creating?
All right. Well, yeah, great answer. And I love the depth and all that you're willing to share. When we were talking prior to opening up the call, we were talking about you're very involved with the Institute of Coaching and the Forbes. I'm not sure exactly what to call it, but you're very involved in many different things. Would you say that involvement in your community has helped you grow your practice? And can you talk a little bit more about what you're involved with and what you're doing to spread the word about coaching and everything that you provide?
Well, thank you. A couple of things is really important. Don't go and involve yourself in activities, number one, that you're not going to fully commit to. One of the most frustrating things that I see people do is they want to join all these organizations and then in a very mediocre way participate. Not a good idea. You know, I'm part of the Forbes Coaches Council. Well, what does that mean? That means that I write a lot of content and I get interviewed a lot by Forbes. And the range is sometimes I'm one of 10 people that they talk to, one of 12 about a theme or a subject. Other times it's an article that I've written, like I've written a couple of articles that have been syndicated through Forbes. One was like, you know, how do you find the right coach? And how do you know your coach is worth the money you're paying them? So that is nothing but another tool for you to have a voice in this industry. If you go, I'll give an example. Harvard's, the McLean Medical School and the Institute of Coaching have an affiliate relationship. I've seen people join the Institute of Coaching for a box check, you know, so they can put something on their resume or whatever. Please don't do that. We don't need that. We're actually, and that institute especially, we're looking at research and evidence to further the standards and practices in coaching so that it can be something that is far more effective for the end user, the client, and help us, the professionals, shape and groom ourselves in such a way that we're more effective and that we can differentiate our space from that of a psychiatrist or a psychologist or a consultant. So at the end of the day, these organizations that you lend yourself to, many people do that to exploit that organization's name. You know, I just got through, again, this is my third White House recognition. I've been honored to receive from 3 different presidents Lifetime Achievement Awards for my contributions to coaching. And I've received those awards from state legislatures and governments around the world. And the things that I would tell anyone is the awards come to you because you were committed to what you were running toward. If you run toward awards, if you run toward these institutions and organizations, and you have the idea that you're going to use that or exploit that for self-gain to get your name out there, well, I'm just going to warn you. What good is all that attention if you're, I know, Leigh-Ann, I'm country. I keep wanting to say these words like what the bull left in the barnyard. Y'all that don't know about Texas, bull and barn, never mind. But anyway, some people are full of what the bull left in the barnyard. You'll get that in a minute. When they go and pursue these things that they think are going to be trophies for them. In this profession, success is the result of commitment to excellence. In this profession, success is the result of you being committed to the evolution of your client. And in that pursuit, accolades happen incidentally and along the way. I would offer that for the few things that I lend my name to, I've turned down every week. Facebook sends me, some idiot writes me and says, well, we'll pay you $5,000 a week if you will just advertise our product on your page. And I constantly say no. Why? Because I think the integrity and my name being well respected by those of you who are sharing and choosing to take your time to spend it with us today deserve better than that. And as you evolve in your practice, I'm going to advocate that you make this about your clients. And every time you study, if you're going from a PCC to an MCC, if you have your national board certification, now you're going back to get a Psych D or an MD, remember that you're doing this in order to position your client to thrive. You're not doing this so that you can line your pockets. I promise you, when I started out like many of you. My billable rate was maybe $75 to $100 an hour. Now my billable rate is 10 times that. And the reason why it is so is not because of marketing and advertising. It's because of the ability that I have garnered to effectively bring transformation to the lives of my clients.
Well, I think we would all like a billable rate that's 10 times higher than 75 an hour. So,
yeah.
Okay, so I am gonna have one final question, and then we're gonna actually turn it over to the audience for questions, and Nicole will help manage that. But you are obviously so committed, and I love your authenticity too. My question is, how do you find the time in the day to do all that you're doing? And I sincerely ask it because you're very inspirational.
Well, to be honest, and it's kind of like asking a bear, how do you handle the woods? And, at the end of the day, I have a passion for writing, but that passion is rooted in a curiosity about why do I do or have done some of the foolish, stupid stuff that I've done in my life. And then understanding, okay, how does that connect to the divine purpose for why I'm on this planet? How can I be when my clients, like I have a lot of NFL and NBA players for clients, or a lot of entrepreneurs for clients. And well, how can I tell you to go and work out every day if I don't? Prior to, for those of you that don't know, I was diagnosed with retromolar cancer about 6 weeks ago. And 3 weeks after I had this 12-hour surgery, I was lecturing with lisp and barely able to open my mouth on pain meds, but I was co-facilitating a training in another state to a few hundred people on race, equity, and inclusion for the Coach Diversity Institute. And somebody says, well, you're not supposed to be doing that. Well, yes, I am, because that's what I was created to do. And the minute that I was able, or another thing, now I can't work out. That is driving me nuts. So I bought a Peloton bike, and I get on the bike because I have to. How can I tell a health and wellness client, okay, what's your goal? Well, Dr. Young, my goal is I want to lose 500 pounds. And okay, well, what's your motivation for that? Again, motivational interviewing. Okay, well, what have you done in the past to make that happen? Again, appreciative inquiry. Well, I have to use that on me to get off my behind while having pain, while being medicated, to get on that Peloton. And so, in answering your question, when your day is a construct of your passion, one thing you're learning as coaches, transformation is rooted in core values. I'm going to repeat that. All lasting transformation is rooted in core values. Transformation that is transactional, has a quick extension and a quick decay rate, right? So my core values drive my daily activities. And what I've learned to do is to accept on some days, I'm just not going to hit it out the park. But every day I set 5 goals. If I achieve 3, not all 5, 3, at the end of the month, I've achieved 90 things. Well, at the end of the quarter, I've achieved 270 things. At the half year mark, 540 things. At the end of the year, 1,080 things. And if I just achieve a little over half of my 5 goals every day, that's 1,080 steps toward evolution. Now, Leigh-Ann, Nicole, I'll ask you, do you know anybody that can achieve 1,080 things and not have a significant evolution in their lives?
No, and I love how you just broke it down into numbers. So Nicole, let's add that on our list of things to do.
Okay.
Well, I really appreciate you being so open and candid with me, Dr. Young. What we're going to do now is open it up to our audience, and Nicole is going to explain how that will happen.
Okay. We do have a large group today. So what we're going to do is I'm going to change the settings so that you guys can unmute yourselves. It works best if you raise your hand. If you know how to do that, it's down. If you're on a computer screen, it's down in the reactions section. So down on your control panel there on the bottom, you can raise your hand and I'll call on you in order. And then you can also unmute yourself when you're ready to ask your question. We'll do it that way since we have such a big group. So go ahead and raise hands when you're ready. I'm going to allow people to unmute themselves. All right, David, you are first. How are you today?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Good.
Hi, David.
Hi, Dr. Young. So earlier you said if you can make it about coaching people with compassion and empathy, that should be one of our aims. And I'm really curious about how we could break that down, and how that shows up in developing our practice.
Excellent question. The most important time, and remember this when you get it on an exam, in a coaching session is the 3 minutes before the session starts, right? That's the time when you clear yourself, and there's some simple things you can do to do that. You can just take 3 or 4 deep breaths and just be quiet. Another thing is just lay back, close your eyes, and listen to the room, listen to the air conditioner. Look out the window, pay attention to something in nature. Now, once you do that, when your client comes in, check in and say, how are you? And not in a plagiarizing way, but with intent, how are you? And after your client answers, respond appropriately and sincerely. But after you do that, my technique is I ask the client, would you be open to us just taking a moment to be still and be quiet, just for a moment, so that we can really focus on what's necessary for you today. And when you do that, not only are you cueing empathy, but your client probably for most people, maybe once a month or twice a month, and some people not even that often, has somebody that's actually checking in with them in a meaningful, robust way that allows your client to feel a sense of resonance, a sense of harmony with you. And now you're well positioned for the coaching session to take its own course, rather than to be something you are inadvertently guiding, or in many instances, the halo effect where the client wants to come in and present a certain way to you in order to make themselves feel like they did the right thing with their coach. Our goal is to position the client to be vulnerable. And the only way that they're going to do that is if we create a safe space for them. And when you do that, you've created empathy.
Okay. Yeah.
I hope that's helpful.
That is helpful. Thank you.
Great. Awesome. All right. Next is Lucia.
Hi, thank you. I have a more practical question. So I don't want socioeconomic status to be a limiting factor, but I do want to value my time.
Mm.
What might best practices look like with respect to setting up a sliding scale? Would I correlate it to net paycheck, for example? I don't know where to start. And what percentage do you recommend that I use?
Well, my approach would be a little bit different than that. So the first thing I would ask is, what is your background? Let's start there.
Okay. Oh, what is my background? I thought you were saying what I should ask the client.
Yeah, no, I'm asking you, what is your background?
I'm working on a master's degree.
Okay, and what are your coaching credentials at present?
Well, at present, I don't have the degree. That's what I'm working on.
Okay, but in coaching certifications, do you have a PCC, MCC, National Board Certificate? What do you have?
National board.
Okay, all right. And who is your client?
Well, I heard what you said about finding clients that resonate with your own background. So I'm assuming they would be an immigrant, probably mid to highly educated, probably entrepreneurial, but interested in social justice issues.
Okay. Are you bilingual or trilingual?
Hi.
Okay. So if you notice the questions I asked, I kept doing things that moved us closer to being more nuanceical with every question I asked. So one, you offer a service where you're bilingual. You offer a service to a niche population. You also are in a position now where your credentialing is catching up to you, but you do have your national board certification. I would start by saying anyone who has a national board certification, depending on your market, I would start my fees easily at $100 an hour. That would be a going rate. I feel that is commensurate with that certification, especially if you have a master's degree to accompany that. The other thing is you have to look at the population with whom you work and what their income is. So if you're working with degreed professionals or entrepreneurs, typically that income is going to be per person, maybe $80,000 to $120,000. And at that point, I typically would base my fee structure to look like maybe 1% to 2% of that annual income. So if you got a client or a client base of people that typically are earning, let's say $100,000 a year, well, it would be reasonable for you to charge $2,000 for a package. And listen to what I'm saying, a package of 6 sessions. There is very little use of having a single coaching session. I mean, it's great if it's an existing client, they're coming back in for some crisis management situation. But I feel that it makes far more sense for coaches to set up packages with their clients. And of course, with a contract where you start with a minimum of 6 to 8 visits and then assess from there where to take that client. And again, depending on who your clientele is, typically 1% to 2% of their annual income is what they are willing to pay to engage a coach.
Okay, thank you.
Stephanie, you're up next.
My question actually builds off of this conversation pretty well. Dr. Young, you spoke to the importance of identifying your target clientele or your area of expertise. And I just got to thinking about that sometimes the topics we're passionate about or that we're interested in aren't necessarily the same areas we might be good at coaching in. So I wanted to ask how can someone go about identifying what their target clientele or areas of expertise specifically within coaching might be, and then how might you establish a client base in that area?
Stephanie, I love your question, and I want to speak to something within it, if I may. There is a place in coaching where we can be so passionate about something that is a indicator it is the last area that we need to coach in. And what I mean by that is, if you are coaching in an area where you find over alignment, or the term would be to be overly integrated because of the subject matter. And I'll give you an example of this. Let's say, God forbid, that you just lost a parent, or you just lost a child, or you're going through a divorce, and you decide that because I'm having this experience and it's proximal in time. I'm not saying you can't do this effectively when you're able to put a healthy distance between your emotional state concerning the subject matter and your passion for the subject, which is two totally different things. Earlier, Leigh-Ann mentioned the amygdala and how empathy connected to the amygdala is, and again, that's the sympathetic nervous system. Well, if that empathy can shift a little bit and still have the resonance of the amygdala, but the dominance of the prefrontal cortex, now you are able to be mindfully empathetic and practice accurate empathy or appropriate empathy. And what I'm suggesting is definitely follow where you have a passion, but make sure that when you explore that passion, there is a healthy buffer between you and that which you have a passion for, so that you can coach from an objective standpoint rather than a subjective standpoint. If you are in that space, and only you know that, then coaching in spaces where you have passion would be a wonderful thing. But if you're still overly integrated, if you find that you can be emotional about this, it's probably not time for you to move in that space yet. Was that helpful?
Yes, yeah, and I was speaking more to the idea that, you, for example, you said, oh, my area of expertise is executives or entrepreneurs, and this is how I build my network in those areas. So I'm asking this mainly for, folks who may be just kind of starting out their business or just kind of beginning as a coach. How do you establish that? Like, how do you establish your niche and, figure out what type of coach you are and how you target that niche to build a clientele base?
Another very good question. The first thing is go for the low-hanging fruit. Back in the day, I remember when another life ago, I'm 60, I was getting my CFP, which is Certified Financial Planner. And most companies had this thing where they call it a Project 100. They take 100 of your friends and relatives and set you up to run them off and them not wanting to take your call anymore. But the truth is, they know that because you're going to be most comfortable talking to people that you're familiar with. They know that because those people are going to probably be less indifferent to you and more empathetic toward you. Well, the same thing is true about establishing a coaching premise. Look at the places and spaces where you do not feel uncomfortable going into an environment where if you, let's say you leave an engineering background and you decide that you want to coach engineers and the space you want to coach them in is career. Well, it would make very good sense for you to look, especially coming out of that field, at something that is familiar to you, where you know the jargon, the terminology, where you understand that most professions, if you look at it from a Myers-Briggs standpoint, personality types line up with professions very well. Engineers are typically introverted. They're typically thinking personalities and sensing personality types, right? So if you're going to go into something, it would be wise to nuance yourself to a space that there's a sense of awareness and a sense of familiarity. The caution to that is you risk being more of a consultant than you do being a coach. And what will differentiate you and not have you migrate to both is two different decisions you must make. One, am I using coaching as a skill, or am I doing coaching as a profession? If you're using coaching as a skill, then the deliverable isn't as stringent. But if you're using coaching as a profession, that's when organizations like the National Board in the health and wellness space are going to be a cornerstone for you to make sure that you do things in a guideline that aligns with best standards and practices.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you for that question, Stephanie. Courtney, you're up next.
Hello, Dr. Young. Good
Hi,
afternoon. Yes, well, let me start with my premise of who I am. I'm a recently retired firefighter paramedic, and I have my national board certification as a health and wellness coach. Also have my master's in exercise and wellness. And the exercise and wellness part, it seems that there is a large population that see the importance of the exercise part, but with the wellness part, with the mental health, it tends to be more of a stigma. How do you see us transitioning the need to condition our mental health like we do our physical health? What I'm currently doing, some of the avenues I'm looking is for grants for some of the schools to bring a wellness program for student athletes' career transitions. I did my thesis on health and wellness coaching to support student athletes' career transition, because many of them, 90-some%, don't actually transition into a professional career. So with that being said, I was interested in some of the other avenues, whether they be grassroots or whether they be on the national level, to bring that importance of conditioning our minds through health and wellness coaching and tapping some of the resources to make it easy for us to go both between whether it be coaching skills or coaching profession.
Mm-hmm.
What do you see as some of the other avenues?
I apologize for interrupting you. That's a very good question. I'm working on something now with the NFL, speaking to some of that, where we're looking at fostering different foundations and young athletes. But to better answer your question, this is when you start looking at work from people like Daniel Goleman and understanding what is the relationship between emotional intelligence and awareness and then health and wellness. You know, and I think that where I would start with that is to really get an understanding of why is this connection important. If we look at it from the commercial side of messaging and, okay, how do I market this? How do I message this? What's going to end up happening is you may attract the audience, but you're not going to keep them. The way that you keep this audience is having answers to questions that people did not know to ask. And the way that you do that, and I will use the National Board's website again, is to go back and look at what are some course offerings that come with either an additional certification, look beyond the CEUs if there are some certifications that accompany these CEUs, and start really digging into what is the relationship between these two things. And why does that relationship between these two things matter? When you can connect to that, that's when you can start speaking to your clients in such a way that your questions, you know, again, powerful questions, when you can ask questions that help them to come to that generative moment where they say, damn, I've never thought of that. I never had an idea that there's a relationship between this and this. And then again, your next question, well, since you're recognizing that, I'm observing that you're recognizing that, why would that be meaningful? Or why would that be important to you? You know, and when you can speak to that with the bookmarks of knowledge, understanding that, you know, here's physiological wellness, here's cognitive wellness, here's psychological wellness, and you understand that in a commensurate way, you don't have to sell anything anymore. What you're able to do now is help the client through their own awareness, understand the need and the value for what you are offering in terms of a step in a path or a direction they have not previously migrated. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Thank you so much.
All right.
Right. Great question, Courtney. Somali.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Young. One of the things that I'm very interested in, and I've spent the last 2 decades, is working on diversity, equity, and inclusion. How does one, and one of the things I'm grappling with is that in the coaching space, there are not a lot of people who are like me. I don't want to say I'm a diversity
Pardon me, what do you
coach.
mean like me? I'm sorry for interrupting you, but I want you to specify what that means.
So I'm Asian American of Indian origin. I'm an immigrant.
Mhm.
I grew up in India and then came here to study. So I haven't grown up in the US. I was educated at Columbia and I have all the credentialing, and now I'm working on my ICF, and I've just taken the board exam.
Mhm.
But one of the things that I've been working in public health and DEI all over the world as well here, and I'm interested in bringing that into the coaching sphere. And since you've been a diversity coach and had a lot of experience with it, I was wondering if you had any words of wisdom on
Yes.
how to do it.
Well, I can tell you, I just had the pleasure of speaking to the ICF India a couple of months ago. So this really hits close to home. Any of us, and when I say of us, I'm saying women, marginalized community, LGBTQ, if you're a minority. I know in my culture, which is African-American and Latino blended, I grew up all my life hearing, if you're going to be accepted, you're going to have to be twice as good as the white guy that does what you do. And you can't make the mistakes that they make. And I always use this example. I could be, what's that two men? I'm trying to think of his name, but he's an actor that's always getting high and drunk and falling all of Charlie Sheen. If Charlie Sheen can go and do whatever, Donald Trump can go and do whatever, but let me do it. Let Dr. D. Yvonne Young do any of those shenanigans, and I won't last 30 seconds. And it's true. We live in a world that is not fair. It is just, right? It's just what we make it. Now, the truth is, you cannot get so hypersensitized to that you forget about there are a lot of more good people in this world than there are racists, bigots, and sexists. There are a lot more people that are open-minded than narrow-minded. There are a lot more people that lean toward doing what's right than what's wrong. So I will say to anybody that is in a marginalized community, one of the reasons I have all this stuff on the walls, right, is because I wanted to be irrefutably sound to the point that if someone were to look at me, they could not, even if they don't like me, even let's say they are a bit biased or bigoted or whatever they are, they would have to, after meeting and engaging with me, they would have to say, you know what, I don't like him. He's not my cup of tea, but he's damn good at what he does. Or he knows you know what I mean? I wanted to make sure that I was irrefutably credentialed, that if someone said, well, I don't know, and I can say, you can say you don't know all you want. I'm nationally board certified as a health and wellness coach, and they don't just hand that out to everybody, right? Or I'm an MCC. You don't just get that because you didn't meet some measures. And as we get these credentials, what I'm going to suggest to you is you look at the place where you feel that I can give hope to people that lack it. I can be the change that they seek. As coaches, our job is to give someone enough light. If they are down in the rabbit hole, your job is to shine a flashlight down there and ask them, what do they see? Right? Your job isn't to go down in the rabbit hole with them. As a coach, your job is to remind them, again, your toolbox, appreciative inquiry. Well, there was a time in your life, based on me, you just sitting here, you overcame something like what we're talking about. Tell me about that time. What did you do? What did you use? Who was in your corner? Okay, of that, what's present right now? Maybe those people are deceased, but do you have somebody similar? Or maybe you're not in the same neighborhood, not in the same country, but what in this country do you see that resembles what was back home, right? And as you start connecting to purpose and core values, that is going to enable you to help someone migrate from misery to meaning. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Oh,
Thank you. Thank you. And, you know, related to that, I mean, I'm sort of thinking about how do I fit diversity into into the coaching services, but also I'm interested in sort of working to bring other minorities into the coaching field, especially women
may I say
and
this to
women
you?
of color.
May I say this to you?
Yeah.
Be excellent yourself. And in doing that, you just brought minority women to the table. Excellent yourself. And you just gave a validity because somebody is looking at you saying, well, if she can do that, I can do that. And it may not be a West Indian. It may not be. It may be an Anglo female from Chattanooga. But at the end of the day,
Yeah.
you're creating diversity by having an open mind and a permeable personality to work with all people. I think the greatest tool for diversity is to understand we are the diversity.
Right, right. Thank you. Thank you.
Well coaches certification a few years back, and then I just took the NB, the National Board Certification, and I'm an acupuncturist. I'm a licensed acupuncturist in California, and I'm thinking of letting my acupuncture license end next time it comes up, and I was interested in which trainings you would most recommend as that, coach trainings that would stand alone. I love to learn, so I have no trouble, studying for the rest of my life. That is my plan. But at the same time, I would like to have some credential that stands alone, here.
Well, may I say this to you? There is no credential that stands alone, but there are credentials that are benchmarks. The National Board Certification is a significant benchmark. The MCC level of coaching is a significant benchmark, right? But at the end of the day, what is going to prove transformational for you is your continued evolution as a coach. We never stop learning. And what I would look to do is find programs. I know Erica Jackson over at Well Coaches and Margaret Moore. They're both very close and good friends of mine. And Well Coaches is probably one of the best coaching programs in health and wellness that I've seen ever in the country. It is very comprehensive, especially, did you do the 19-week, the 9-month course with them?
I did the shorter one, and I was thinking about.
Well, your next
one.
step is go back and do that 9-month course with them. It is quite engaging, quite robust. There is a great deal of content that comes with that. And that would be the next step. But again, that is not the beginning of the end, it's the end of the beginning. These are benchmarks because as a good coach and a good clinician, you are going to constantly continue to sharpen your chops. Nobody wants to come to you like you don't want to go to your local Publix or Whole Foods and get last year's bread. Nobody wants to come to you and get last year's coaching because as a science, we are evolving in standards and practices, especially in the evidence and research-based coaching space. And I would just say to any coach, no matter what you have, an MD, PhD, I've got more degrees than a thermometer. At the end of the day, all I learn is that I don't know enough. The more I learn, the more I realize there's more that I need to learn. And to go again on the National Board site and look at what continuing programs are out there for you to get additional CEUs and go after the more robust programs that offer 21 units, 15 units. But since you did Well Coaches, I'm going to tell you, go back and do that 9-month course. It is phenomenal.
Thank you.
All right. Leigh-Ann, do you want to do one more? We've got about 2 minutes left. Or do you think that's probably...
Dr. Young, do you have time for one more question?
Of course I do. This is
our
Leigh-Ann asking me. Of course I do.
Well, hey, I want to, as a coach, I respect your time.
Yeah, this is family.
Okay, we will do one more. Alexa, you're going to be our last one today.
Thank you so much. I feel so lucky. So my question is, I studied at Health Coach Institute about 2 years ago, and I got what I needed from that, but I am definitely looking, to explore further education. I was looking to get into MPH and study behavioral change on that level. But my specific question is, because I was taught nutrition at Health Coach Institute and you're taught, the fundamentals of movement and things like that. I know I want to teach wellness to my current audience. However, my nutrition personally is like, I can't eat or tolerate a lot of vegetables. I can't tolerate a lot of things that contain oxalates. My friend came to me recently saying, that's your niche. Like, your niche is saying, hey, I can give you the fundamentals, but at the end of the day, everybody is going to be different. And so that was a lot I just said, but my main question is, how do I make a niche out of, saying, here are the fundamentals of nutrition, of course, decrease processed foods, but it's going to look different for everybody. I really want to find a way to explore what that niche can look like. Thank you.
Well, I'm going to say this, your struggle is your stage. So the things that you are challenged with in life typically are they say the stumbling blocks are always the stepping stones. And that is so true. What I would suggest, and this is a conversation that I think you probably might want to talk to your coach about, or if you want to reach out and get on my calendar. But this is one of these things where you ask yourself, you know what? Where are my core values right now? And what is my vision? What is this thing, this yearning that I feel, this inclination, this motivation that is tugging at me? And once you look at that, attach some feasibility and logistical homework to it, and make sure that when you look at this messaging, that it's not a hard pivot, but it's a pivot that challenges you to get out your comfort zone, but it's not so challenging that you could fail. And when you find something that gives you that type of engagement and that level of motivation and synergy, then that's probably at least the next step to take, if not the first step in the direction you want to take.
Okay. And how do I get on your calendar? How do I find more information about that?
You could reach out to me on LinkedIn. I think they put some things in the chat here where you could go to the Dr. D. Yvonne Young website, or you could reach out to me via LinkedIn. You could just Google, my name is spelled like Ivan, but it's pronounced Yvonne. So Dr. D is an initial, Yvonne, I-V-A-N, Young, and I'm easy to find.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I actually was busy trying to write down all the sayings, but I think I'm actually going to go back through the recording probably and write down what I missed. But my favorite was definitely, we live in a world that is just what you make it. Love it, love it, love it. Well, thank you so much. Do you have any parting words for us before we end this awesome presentation?
Yeah, I just want to say to you that whatever you feel is your darkest day, that is when illumination is most valued, and it's when it's greatest. Some of the things that you feel are in your life right now that are stumbling blocks are truly your stepping stones. And the things that you say to yourself are far more important than what other people say about you. Be very mindful of what you think and what you speak, because you are your thoughts and your beliefs. And belief is nothing more than what you know to be true. So accept and know that the truth about you is that you're much greater than you think, and that you're here for a reason. Your job is to find out what that reason is. And you get to do that one moment at a time.
That was beautiful. Thank you so much. Well, it really has been a pleasure. I'm not gonna lie, like these last few weeks, they've been really, really tough because the NBCHWC is really growing, and with growth comes a lot of struggle. So just having this hour was awesome and inspiring. I think it was inspiring for everyone here, and it was for me too. So I really appreciate your time, Dr. Young, and thank you so much.
Thank you. God bless you, everyone. Happy Thanksgiving and have safe holidays.
Thanks. Have a good day.